Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Lost in Criterion. I'm John Patrick Owatari Dorgan, and with me, as always, is a man whose introductions always fall laughably short.
I am the Adam Glass, and yes, they do. Thank you for playing to my pomposity in that one. This week we're talking about Brazil, the 1985 Terry Gilliam film, taking place somewhere in the 20th century.
Yeah.
Many critics,
I love it.
Many critics consider this to be the greatest sci-fi film of all time, which is a little overplayed.
I just made a weird noise.
You made a very well placed weird noise, even if you didn't do it on purpose, because I wouldn't.
No, I did it on purpose. I didn't. It was an actual instinctual reaction.
Okay, good.
Did anybody calling this one of the greatest sci-fi films?
Yes.
Of all time is not a sci-fi fan.
Yeah. No, I certainly
doesn't actually
agree with that.
like sci-fi film.
Yeah. Obviously, it is a great movie, though. Very dystopian present more than dystopian future, because it's not. I say it says it takes place in somewhere in the 20th century, and it's filmed in
dystopian
1985.
past at this best.
Yeah, it could be.
No,
but yes. And actually, as far as setting, I want to mention I looked on the IMDb, and this is one of the worst. One of the reasons never to go to IMDb. But someone.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. I already know what's going to be said.
Gilliam, in commentary on the film, has said that the city that Brazil takes place in, and it's not necessarily Brazil, obviously, it's named for the song that provides the theme music. But anyway.
It would be, confusing if it were Brazil, actually.
Yes. Even more so confusing than if it were actually Brazil. Anyway, what I mean to say here is that Gilliam says that the city it takes place in is on the border of Los Angeles and Belfast, which is a commentary on the states of Los Angeles and Belfast in 1985, and very true to.
And it fits the movie perfectly.
Yeah, it fits the movie perfectly. This movie does take place on a border between Los Angeles and Belfast. Anyway, a commentator on IMDb added, and this is absurd because Los Angeles, California, and Belfast, Ireland are not even on the same continent. Completely missing the point of what he's trying to say, and then trying to look smart. Yes. So if you are that commenter, I didn't bother. I'm sure I could find your name on there, but actually no, it was on the trivia page. So I don't think they're tagged by name on editors anymore or ever.
They're
it's
tagged by stupidity.
Yeah, I don't think it acts like Wikipedia. It won't tell you who made specific edits, but
which is a serious flaw in their design.
Well, I'm not going to. Listen, there's a lot of serious flaws in how IMDb handles it.
Which is why I never open IMDb for this podcast, ever.
But anyway, so Brazil. Welcome to Lost in Criterion.
Are we going to do it like that from now on?
No, but we did it like that this time.
Welcome to
Lost
in Criterion.
No, actually,
I'm your host.
I'm sorry, I interrupted there. Another quick little note, and I mentioned this at the end of the last episode, but the movie is titled Brazil after the song, but the original, or at least an early working title for the movie, was 1984 and a half, referencing 1984, the book that shares some very similar dystopian ideals, though apparently Gilliam claims he never read it prior to making this movie. And
that's very hard to believe.
Well, he didn't go to high school in America, so he didn't have to read it.
But he went to high school. He went to high school in English-speaking country.
I don't know how old he is. And when I can't remember when 1984 came out. He may not have been.
Oh, it's pretty old.
Well, yeah, but he may not have been in a position to be required to read it.
That's true.
Anyway, and also a reference to Fellini's 8.5, which our previous movie, And the Ship Sails On, which we talked about last week, was a Fellini movie. So that's why I mentioned it.
Well,
and that they're back-to-back in spine order for our Criterion collection.
Well, and like we said in that one, go together quite well.
Yes, yes.
Like, it's times like these where I sometimes think the Criterion Collection has a set of running motifs and groupings of movies.
Maybe just they release
and then it falls
them.
apart completely because they put in things like Armageddon.
Yes, maybe. Actually, one of the reasons that title was switched, which is, this is great too. Obviously, in 1984, there was a film adaptation of 1984 released. So calling it 1984 and a half
might have been a little confusing.
Might have been. Not necessarily that it was a little confusing, but they thought they might run into legal trouble with the George Orwell estate.
That's true. And that's reasonable. That's quite
reasonable.
possible.
Yeah.
But I still like that title.
Yeah.
Because it fits the movie.
Yeah. No, it's a wonderful title. Because it's
very easily.
It's a dystopian future like 1984, but in a very incompetent way.
Yeah. It's like it's the non-scary 1984.
Yeah. Well, no, it's still scary, but scary in its incompetence, not scary in its.
Right. I mean, like, I find 1984 the book terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, reading it makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I like it, love the book, but it's very, like, it's actually intensely scary. This one is more like scary because of the similarities you see to the world around you, and you say, "Oh my God, is this actually what's going on?" kind of thing. It's a different sort of scary because the incompetence is laughably accurate.
Yes.
Silence.
Yes. No. I mean, this is a movie about the incompetence of bureaucracy in a time when, in the 1980s in Reagan America and Britain at the time, bureaucracy was becoming more incompetent as people came to power that seemingly wanted to eliminate big government by making it so cumbersome to deal with big government that everyone would want to just get rid of it.
Now, speaking as a person who lives in Japan,
yes,
where bureaucracy is the thing.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of interesting because here it's a lot of times feels like it's down to a neat little science.
Yeah.
It's very, very smooth, and it's actually kind of hard for me when this is totally off topic, okay? Just because we're talking about bureaucracy. Okay. It's really interesting because I go back to the United States, and for example, I get to deal with the Bureau of Motor Vehicles.
Yes.
As I've discussed multiple times.
Which is laughably incompetent in their bureaucracy.
It is actually accurate to this film.
Yes.
The people who told me that a United States passport is not a valid form of ID for identifying myself with a new name.
Yes.
Mind you, the most researched document available to the United States government.
Yes.
And it's not enough. But then here I can fill out a couple papers and do almost anything.
Yes.
And, like, it'll be processed on the same day. By a man. And several people. Like, several men and women in an office.
Yes.
Who actually understand what all the paperwork does.
And who you can meet.
It's really weird. Yes, it's really weird. That, like, I was watching this and I was like, almost now can't comprehend the absurdity, except for by, like, going back in time to, like, every time I've had to go in and get some paperwork filled out of the United States government.
Yes. No, obviously,
or specifically the Ohio government.
There's bureaucracy that works, and there's bureaucracy that really exists in Brazil, and like the Douglas Adams text adventure game Bureaucracy, which is a great example of dealing with this in a less lethal way. But
right.
But a great
yeah,
game too.
Like not as terrifying.
Yeah. Though still pretty terrifying in its own weird way.
I've never played Bureaucracy, so I'm going to have to...
The entire plot of Brazil centers around trying to get the bank to recognize your change of address form.
Oh, of Bureaucracy, not Brazil.
Yes, of Bureaucracy. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. I've read about it.
Yeah.
Or
it's a great game. It includes one moment where in order to get money out of the bank, you have to fill out a deposit slip for a negative amount because you don't have any withdrawal slips, and it wouldn't help you anyway. They can't give you withdrawal slips because they keep sending them to your old address. So there's a lot
very similar to this film.
Yeah, there's a lot of really crazy, tough puzzles in that because of its mocking incompetent bureaucracy.
Right, because like dealing with incompetent bureaucracy is actually quite difficult.
Yes.
As seen in this film.
This film is the middle part of what's referred to as Gilliam's Dreamer trilogy. The first being Time Bandits, childhood, and escaping a bad childhood through time travel. Much more depressingly, Brazil, number 2, and escaping his really, really terrible, life. But yeah, it's not as
insanity.
Terrible. But yeah, well, through dreams, and then as life
eventually
becomes more terrible, he's just bored in general, and he escapes in daydreams, and then as life actually becomes really quite terrible for him, insanity. And then the Adventures of Baron Munchausen, which I'm sure we'll watch at some point.
It's on the list. I've never watched it before, so I'm pretty excited.
Is about old age. Is the finishing to that trilogy. What do we want to talk about?
Well, we should both point out from the very beginning that neither of us is able to get the Criterion.
Yes, neither of us did watch the official
So if there is
Criterion
something
television.
different about it, it seems from our research, I'm using air quotes right now,
Yes.
that the Criterion Collection is the same movie as the director's cut, just more extras on the DVD.
Yeah,
We don't know.
There's some talk in the commentaries I read with the DVD stuff and Criterion's website that suggests that the European cut was 142 minutes, which is what we watched, and that is the director's cut. But then that the and if you're going to watch this, watch the director's cut, because the American cut was like 94 minutes and is there's a lot of changes. And there was a lot of fighting, and that's one thing that seems to mark Gilliam films every so often is they end up in development hell for a while, and this wasn't so much in development hell as it was in release hell, because Universal did not want to release the movie.
It is understandable why.
Yes. But anyway, watch the director's cut. But there was some commentary that suggested that the Criterion edition had just a couple little bits added to it,
but it would have to be without changing the time.
Yeah, called Terry's own cut, referred to colloquially, which I can't imagine. Anyway, the argument that kept this from being released was that one of the heads in Universal thought the movie was too depressing.
It is very depressing,
and it is very depressing. It is incredibly depressing, and. To get it released, Gilliam actually went behind their backs, and in a series of guest professorships at a film classes, he under the guise, when they heard about it, of just showing clips of the movie, he showed the entire thing, and eventually screened it secretly against Universal's wishes for the Los Angeles Film Critics Association, who gave it all the awards that they could give to a movie that was not even released.
In general, all the awards.
Well, it did. It won 2 Oscars then, and was nominated at least for 2 Oscars. It was a movie that didn't really get public release, and even after it got public release in the U.S., it wasn't super popular. They didn't make a whole lot of money back on it. Probably not helped by the fact that it was in development hell for a while.
Well, but that's the weird thing about it, is like, if you're, not to defend movie studios, but if you're in the business of making money off of movies, this is probably not what you want to go for.
No, this isn't really a movie that's going to make money. It's a great movie.
Because it's a great movie. I enjoyed it, but...
Well, especially if we're looking at the movies it was coming out with, 80s sci-fi at the time. If this is a science fiction movie,
it is. It's just not necessarily the greatest science fiction movie.
I wouldn't call it the greatest science fiction movie, but it's very,
maybe my favorite dystopian parallel universe movie?
It takes a lot of cues from like Fritz Lang's M in Metropolis and The Third Man. It's got kind of a noir thing going on with how the characters dress and interact. And it's very depressing in the end. Whereas the movies this was coming out with, 1980, it came out in 83, didn't it? Or 85. It came out in 85.
Right?
So we're coming out at the same time as Back to the Future 1. And,
right, in
Temple of Doom.
See that, yeah. You can see in the time period that we're looking for upbeat.
Yeah. Lots of... This movie is trying to say something in a time when movies weren't... especially sci-fi movies weren't trying to say anything.
Well, and in line with I think kind of in line with mainstream culture at the time was like, let's not be overly self-critical.
Yeah.
Let's not examine things too closely.
Yeah.
And this movie examines things way too closely.
Indeed.
Like, it takes bureaucracy, incompetent bureaucracy specifically, under a microscope.
Yeah.
And shows us every niggling detail of this nightmare bureaucracy.
One fun little thing, the Universal guy who the argument was with and made his own cut of the movie that was only 94 minutes long or whatnot, Scheinberg is his last name, and he's actually credited as worst boy in the closing credits of this movie. But yeah. So, Jonathan Pryce stars as Sam Lowry. I've met Jonathan Pryce. And
congratulations.
I stole his vodka.
That's horrible.
He left it in the hotel where I work, and I happened to be the first person in after he checked out, and it was there. So just a little bottle of Grey Goose. So I took it home with me. I didn't drink it; my roommates did, but I stole his vodka. I never think about him being in Brazil though, because whenever I think about Jonathan Pryce, I always picture him from like the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. And I forget that he's got this career, this very long career.
You know, I wasn't even thinking about that.
Yeah.
Like, in that, I had forgotten that he was in those movies. Mm-hmm. I was like, why?
Why is he look familiar?
This man in recently.
Yeah.
And then, I didn't even think about that. Well, because it's such a character disconnect. The two characters are not in the same vein at all.
Yeah, no, certainly not. If anything, in Pirates of the Caribbean, he's part of the bureaucracy. But
right, well, he's part of the bureaucracy here. He's just
yes,
an active, happy part of the bureaucracy in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes.
So yeah, this movie is. So this was the first time I'd ever seen it. I'd seen clips of it and stuff like that, but I'd heard about it, but I'd never watched it, even though I love Time Bandits. Everyone who had ever told me about it described it as weird, and then not really ever had anybody tell me I had to watch it. You know what I mean? I'd never had somebody say, "Oh, you need to watch it." I've mostly just heard, "That's a weird movie."
It's a weird, very good movie.
Well, I kind of wonder whether or not people were watching the director's cut or not.
Maybe.
Because if the movie's 90 minutes, I can see saying, that was a weird movie. To get it off, so I'd never watched it, and I enjoyed it thoroughly, but yeah.
Well, let's the 90-minute cut included cutting most of the dream sequences, which makes it less of a weird movie, I think.
Makes it.
Yeah. It's referred to as the Love Conquers All ending because it removes the sound of Jill's death after Sam's arrested, which we don't see on screen, but we hear gunfire as she protests, and then she stops protesting as he's arrested. And then it eliminates that very ultimate scene of them talking about how he's gone. So it ends instead then with the dream sequence where she's alive and everyone's happy and he's escaped. And so it ends on that instead of ending with the very downer ending of us being told that he's just crazy. He's gone crazy, and that's why he's happy.
So, I have a couple questions. Okay, so that's the main director's cut, or the difference between the director's cut and the main cut. Now, I've got two problems with that.
Okay.
With calling it the Love Conquers All cut.
Yeah.
And with the way it's cut right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, these mesh together, okay? It's going to be really hard to explain, but first of all, I do not like the last scene.
Okay.
But I do not like the last scene, not for the reason that everybody who has ever listened to our podcast thinks I would not like the last scene. I actually usually do not mind depressing endings.
All right.
I do not like the last scene because the last scene seems like he's calling us an idiot.
Okay.
Because telling us that was not real...
You think it's already clear that it's not real?
It is very clear that it's not real.
Okay.
Which why the Love Conquers All cut is a stupid name. Because we watch things happen that are absolutely, fundamentally impossible within the laws that govern this world.
Yeah.
Okay? Not the laws, like as in like the government laws. The laws of reality.
Yeah, it's very clear that it's continuing as the dream sequence.
Right, it is continuing.
So in order, they'd have to cut, and maybe they did cut way back. I mean, everything
they might have cut away a bunch of that dream.
Yeah,
that insane fever dream.
I mean, in order to end this on a Love Conquers All thing, they'd have to not just cut out the sound of Jill's off-screen death. They'd have to stop the movie with the two of them together. You know, it would have to end at that scene,
which is
before they're arrested.
Oh, before they're arrested. It's possible that that's where it ends. But what I was thinking is if they showed, it is possible that they could show the scene where they are rescued, where they rescue him.
Yeah, that's the suggestion.
And then cut straight to the car getaway or something like that. And then that would be cohesive enough to make it seem like they
I guess that could work. But at the same time,
you'd have to cut just minutes and minutes and minutes of movie there.
Yeah,
to make that happen.
But obviously, and I've watched the rest of the movie. I've watched 2 hours before that instead of 45 minutes before that or whatever. But 75. But I think you're right in watching the escape, even before we get to her picking him up and them driving down in the house, whatever. Even before we get to that point, watching that, even as Robert De Niro's character, even as Tuttle rappels down into the place rescuing him, it's already absurd. It is absurd. It's already there's no way this is really happening in my mind.
Well, at that point, I know that it's not really happening, but I can deal with it as being part of the movie. Like, because the movie's a little bit absurd anyway in that way. I could deal with that, and then, like I said, if they cut straight to, like, the truck getaway. Or something like that. Or even cut straight to them, like, that they're happy home somehow or something. I could deal with that, but they would have to cut out so much movie. And they did, because it was 90 minutes or something like that. But in general, if they show any of the sequences that lead up to that, it becomes clear that this is not real. And then showing me that final sequence in the interrogation room feels overmuch. I feel like I'm being told, by the way, in case you didn't notice, when all those crazy things happened for the last 15 minutes, that was not real.
Well,
he's insane.
I think it's it's not just there to tell us he's crazy. I think you're right that we already know he's crazy from what's happened. We know that this is escapism, and not an actual escape. I think it's there to hammer home one last time the lack of empathy.
That I can see that like they go and it's just like, well, that's too bad or whatever. Yeah, like I can see that. I can definitely agree with that. They could have done it without the way. I just wasn't a huge fan of the way it was cut in.
Yeah,
like I didn't like them appearing in his dream. I didn't like that element of it. They could have just shown the interrogation room after without some of those weirdness things. Because believe it or not, I don't consider it a negative ending. Mm-hmm. Because I can't for the life of me remember the name of the character. What's the main character's name?
Sam Lowry.
Sam. Yeah, okay. Is Sam happy? Yes.
Yeah.
Therefore, in my version, it doesn't matter that he's happy because he's insane. Assuming that his delusion is permanent, he will be happy until the day he dies. Therefore, he has escaped the nightmare. He is happy. Therefore, he is the winner. Everybody else in the room is still living in the nightmare. He is not.
Well, okay, but is he
No,
really?
I'm sticking by my insanity as viable escape.
Okay, I guess, but
No, but I mean, like, to me, that's not necessarily
okay,
the definition of a negative ending.
He's gone to his
it's
happy
horrible.
place,
He has gone to his happy place, and nobody can touch him there.
Well, I think Gilliam to a certain extent agrees with you on that. He's.
But that's why I don't like them cutting in their faces, cutting in, because that ruins the idea that his happy place is his happy place, and nothing will bother him there because their faces just appear in it. It's weird.
But it was that scene actually. Apparently, that was the first idea that came to him. The leaning in to say he's gone mad, and the action of him going mad. I agree that it's not necessarily necessary, but that he seems to say is the first idea he came up with because he asked himself what kind of story would have a man going insane as the happy ending, because this is the happy ending. Him escaping into his fantasy.
That's what I'm saying. Is this is not an unhappy ending per se.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see that. I don't like that. I don't like the fact that they are juxtaposed onto the fantasy. If that didn't happen, I would have been much happier.
Yeah, we can
still like the movie. I just don't like that element.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
them being back to back, the two scenes being back to back, where they've got his fantasy, and then they cut out to them being outside talking about him. Totally fine. Them leaning in and interrupting the fantasy shows that maybe this is not an isolated world for him, which doesn't line up with the fact that he's escaped. Does that make sense? It ruins some of the happiness of it. But we don't know, because it's also like third person perspective, like he's up in the air, but they're living in the house down at the bottom, so it's a bit confusing.
Yeah,
but that's confusing because of the nature of film and like showing things from the outside rather than internally. And
well, I think one more important thing that happens in that scene is him humming Brazil. Mm-hmm. I think I don't know how necessarily important that is, and if I saw it without it, I don't know if I'd be necessarily missing anything. But I think the fact that that's been such a recurring theme throughout everything, and now he's mournfully sort of humming it. It's a very happy tune that he's mournfully humming. But it signals that, I know, it just drives home that he's in his happy place, I think.
Right, that's why I don't see it as necessarily a bad. I don't see it as necessarily a negative ending.
Yeah,
like obviously for the time and the situation, I know that the film studio probably wanted it to end with him actually escaping.
Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious.
But I'm okay with him just escaping internally.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, but we should talk about other parts of the movie, not just the last 10 minutes of it. I do love retro future tech. It's one of my favorite things in the entire world.
Always fun.
And I love this movie's retro future tech very much.
Well, the tech in this movie is such a... My new roommate used to be in the Navy, and he tells me that the Navy never gets rid of anything. That on all the naval ships, there's still the pneumatic tube communications. Despite the fact that we have sonar and radar, we still have every night people on every tip of the ship with binoculars watching. Whatever has worked in the past just get built onto. And all of the tech in this movie is very much that idea.
Yeah. No, but I love pneumatic tubes, so I'm totally happy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very happy that there are pneumatic tubes. I think I need to install pneumatic tubes in my house.
Oh, I know. If everywhere could have pneumatic tubes, I'd be the happiest man on earth.
Yeah. Maybe we'll build big ones.
I especially love his workaround with connecting the two pipes together. Yes. That made me very happy for a while.
And then the pipe explodes. It's wonderful. Yeah. No, there's obviously a lot of great little things in this movie too.
I love the split desk. That made me so happy when I saw that.
Yes. It's a great joke. The desk going through the wall and being shared with the
Yeah,
Harvey
no,
lying on the other side.
They made the wall after the desk, and they didn't bother to move the desk.
I also love
so
that
share the desk.
They not only made the wall after the desk, but also after some of the posters were hung on the wall behind it.
Yeah,
at least one of them,
it's wonderful. That's why that's actually was the tip off for me that it was half a desk.
Yes.
At first was the fact that the wall was also
because
cut in half.
You notice
like,
that before it starts to move, and then he says,
right? Yeah, you notice that, and then it starts to move, and then the movement is not a surprise. It is a surprise, but it's more fun that way.
Yeah, it's great. I also love when his air conditioner breaks down right before we meet the actual Tuttle. When he calls Central Services and is told that due to budget restraints, they can't afford to pay anyone between the hours of like midnight and 9 a.m. I think is what it says. But then right there in one of the smallest jokes in the so easy to miss.
This is not a recording.
This is not a recording. That's so great to me.
Yeah, no, I heard that, and then it goes exactly into the exact same spiel, same tone and everything.
Yes.
Right again from the beginning. It's like, oh, not a recording, huh? Well, and then I love that like they still managed to have two guys show up 10 minutes later.
Yes, despite the fact that it was not a recording. Who don't have the proper paperwork, mind you.
Right.
And get very, very vindictive when called out on not having the right paperwork.
Yeah. No, it's really... They are two very... So, is that, what's his name? Bob... I can't remember his
name. We've seen him before.
Yes, I know. I can't remember. Costas?
Hoskins. Bob Costas is a sports announcer for NBC.
Yeah, that's why.
Hoskins is who you're thinking of.
Yeah,
Mario.
I have that problem.
Yes.
I have that problem. I have the same problem you have with foreign names with non-foreign names.
With English. All right. No, that's fine. Yes, Bob Hoskins.
Yeah. So, okay. Because, I mean, it's... Man... I don't know.
Well, they're very interesting to me, too, because they're very vindictive when they're on the clock, and they kind of take over his apartment later on. And
they definitely take over his apartment later.
Well, yeah. But all of the villains in this movie are... I think TV Tropes has a page devoted to punch clock villains. It's like the old Looney Tunes cartoon with the sheepdog and the wolf who come into work every morning, and they punch in, and then they... But right after it, see you tomorrow, Sam. And they have lunch.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
they're only evil while they're on the clock. And like the torturer, Palin's character, Jack Lint, brings his daughter to work. I can't remember which one of his daughters it is, but he brings his daughter to work as he's walking in covered in blood, and his job is to torture people into talking and then bill them for... Well, I guess actually it's someone else's job to bill him. It's the bureaucracy.
Yeah, he doesn't do any billing.
Yes, but yeah, they're all very... And Jack Lint is probably the only person we could call Sam's friend in the entire movie. Eventually he and Jill fall in love, and they can be friends, but... And at the same point, his mom's certainly not his friend.
No.
But yeah, and outside of work, they're perfectly friendly, and inside of work, Jack's torturing him.
A nightmare human being.
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to point out that I like what I thought when I saw Bob Hoskins though is Hoskins. I cannot say his name. Was that somehow this role is directly connected to Super Mario Brothers?
Well, he is
this
a
is
heating
like the
specialist
dystopian
here.
Future of Super Mario.
He's a heating specialist here, and then he becomes a
plumber, a supernatural plumber.
Yes, a plumber sucked into an alternate dimension. That is such a... I hope there's a Criterion release of the Super Mario Brothers movie.
I hope so, too.
I imagine Hoskins liked this movie better than Super Mario.
Definitely.
I think we probably mentioned it during... what was that movie? The Last Good Friday, or The
Long Good Friday.
The Long Good Friday, yes. But I think I mentioned it then, but when asked why he did Super Mario Brothers, I believe Bob Hoskins' response was a summer home.
Yeah. No, I'm sure he enjoyed doing this film and was proud of this film. But man, I hate him so much in this film. But then again, like, yeah, you're right. It's the whatever you call them, the punch.
Yeah, punch clock villains.
Yeah, it's.
Well, they're on the work.
It is.
They're villains. Yeah,
they're evil because that's what their job requires.
Yeah, and that's all
very absurd.
That's the only reason they're evil. Because they're not even necessarily they're not bad people. They're just cogs in this machine, and they have to do their job.
Doing bad things, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's ultimately it's in Nuremberg we got a lot of Nazis saying I was just following orders, and then and that's where we are with these guys. It's just the role they have to play.
Well, and the weird thing about it is that especially in this film, we get to see the chain go all the way up to the top. We get to see the top link of this nightmare, okay? Of this evil. And even the top link is not evil per se.
No.
He doesn't have the attitude of, like, there is no villain.
Yeah. And none of the bad that happens in this movie is thought out. It's not planned. It's everyone trying to cover their own ass, but doing it incompetently.
Well, and then we get the leader, the primary agent of the Ministry of Information saying, like, is basically just doing a very bad job of fighting terrorism, which seems to exist only because of the Ministry of Information's existence.
Yeah,
it's a nightmare.
And, like Jill asked, have you ever actually met a terrorist? There's one really, really interesting thing about this movie is that we never meet any
see what a terrorist
ourselves.
is. Yeah,
we don't.
Jill's not a terrorist,
and it's just as likely. If it's super. I don't necessarily agree with this. It just popped in my head, but it's just as likely that these are all governmental false flags. There's no reason. There's no reason to necessarily believe that they're not. We don't know who's committing these. And one thing that definitely is shown, normally if freedom fighters are heroes, we don't see the innocents get killed, and we certainly see
just murdered,
innocents murdered here, except in the very last when Sam might believe that Jill is still a terrorist, but in his escaping with Jack in the dream sequence, or not Jack. Archibald Harry Tuttle. I don't know why I called him Jack. Why did I call Robert De Niro's character Jack? I have no idea.
I don't know.
Anyway, when he's escaping with Tuttle in that final dream sequence, it's the only time when there's violence that doesn't kill innocents.
Well, doesn't sort of, right? Because but don't we see the floor cleaner get shot in the head or something?
Oh. You might be right. The floor cleaner...
But assuming the floor cleaner is equally evil to everybody else in the bureaucracy, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he's
cleaning the floors of evil.
It's still his cog. He's still playing his role in the machinery of the bureaucracy. I guess he does get killed, if only to set up that Battleship Potemkin visual reference of the vacuum going down the stairs ahead of the... but the Battleship
Potemkin esque scene is pretty lovely.
I can't say that word either, and I'll have to learn to say that because it's
Potemkin.
Probably right.
Hey, I only pronounce it the way my film teacher did.
That's okay.
So he could be, and that was in Kentucky, so it could be totally off.
That's okay. It's probably right. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's the only sort of bystander who gets killed who isn't, and he's certainly not directly involved in the fight.
Right, but he's not necessarily 100% a bystander anyway.
Yeah. He's still the government employee,
Right, he's still a cog in the machine that is being freedom fought against.
Yes.
But that gets into the whole thing that we don't necessarily see that Tuttle is he's not a freedom fighter, except for in
except in that dream sequence. Even Tuttle, while they label him a terrorist, all he does is goes around and fixes things without doing the proper paperwork.
Right, and that makes him a saboteur.
Yes.
But the weird thing about it is that which is why you get into this idea that maybe every single terrorist is not... There is no terrorism. There is no terrorist organization.
Yeah.
which makes it even more 1984 like.
Yeah, and
except for
that's
in the
only
1984 version of it,
Yeah.
it's not governmental incompetence; it's
Yeah.
governmental plot making.
Yeah, the only reason I would shy away from saying something like that, and obviously I brought it up, but the only reason I shy away from saying something like that is because it implies more competence in the government. And false flags always imply more confidence in the government than I believe the government has.
Well, in this situation,
Yeah.
if everybody's trying to cover their own ass,
Yeah.
false flags don't necessarily have to be an implication of competence. They can be an indication of everybody throws up a false flag to cover their ass.
Yeah. Somebody else trying to
enough
cover
to
their
create an
ass.
organization.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like,
Okay.
if somebody's chasing after Tuttle and those like central services people accidentally turn the heating system into a bomb, which seems totally possible,
Yeah.
and blow up a building, then somebody has to, at that organization, has to cover their ass.
Yeah.
And then that leads to more people having to cover other people's asses to make it all fit together and not reveal their own incompetence.
No, I think this really
until
works.
you can just create an organization from zero.
Yeah, that there's
I mean, Sam becomes a terrorist without having ever been a terrorist.
Yeah.
Jill, we see Jill does too.
Well, no, he does. They do end up, and Sam specifically, it's his fault. They do end up killing, those four people who were chasing them.
Yes, that's true.
As he insists that they need to escape against her wishes, but
yeah, which unfortunately we get into the fact that Sam is his own worst enemy.
Yeah.
Throughout this entire film, like he escalates things absurdly. Although at the same time, Jill would have been.
Yeah, she would have been arrested
in theoretically. Yeah. Even though it's weird because Jack, is it Jack? Which one's his friend? What's the name of his friend?
His friend is Jack. That's
okay. Now I'm scared to say Jack. Jack implies that there's serious bureaucratic measures in place to prevent the death of the people being questioned.
Yes.
So it is safe to assume, in fact, that Jill would have been questioned, hurt, but being not a terrorist would not have died.
Yeah. Those still would have been billed.
Would have been billed.
Yeah.
But would have at least survived. Because she is not a terrorist. And so, which makes Sam's efforts resulting in actually making her into a terrorist kind of absurd.
Yeah.
This movie. It's really hard to talk about.
Well, there's a lot going on.
And it's a very long movie.
And it is a very long movie. 2 hours and 24 minutes. It's a long cut. Excuse me, I yawned there.
Yes, and you yawned in dead air. Congratulations.
I yawned in dead air. It's, that's what this is all about, isn't it?
This
podcast that encapsulates our podcast.
It's just
yawning
a massive human yawn in midair.
Yeah.
Or dead air, not midair. Oh, I'm losing my mind. It's just unpacking the nature of this world is more than we are.
Well, that's because it's such a world that's built so well. I mean,
it is, and that's what makes it so.
Yeah, that's what makes it such a great movie.
Yeah, is that the world he exists in is both absurd and internally consistent.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful and horrible.
It is beautiful and horrible. I mentioned earlier that the movie kind of ends with him humming that song that exists everywhere within the movie, which is a song called Brazil. It's where the movie gets its name even. The music was done by a guy named Jeff Mulder. I'm sorry, actually, that piece was performed by Jeff Mulder. The music was done by Michael Kamen. Michael Kamen, it'll be fun to note, and I feel like we mentioned this somewhere before, but I can't remember why. It might have been in the Die Hard episode that we kicked this off with. But Michael Kamen did the music for Die Hard and the entire Die Hard series, as well as the music for Mr. Holland's Opus, as well as the music for our favorite movie, Hudson Hawk.
Yes.
Which we also talked about last time. We talked about a Gilliam film, but Michael Kamen was not involved with. But But yeah, everything's full circle, man. It all revolves around Hudson Hawk.
Yes, it does.
That's
We
the
have
entire
7
universe.
degrees of Hudson Hawk
Yeah,
as a concept.
everything is Hudson Hawk.
But yeah, no, we don't need to talk about it anymore.
No,
As much as it is my favorite movie.
You accidentally mentioned that Roger Ebert. You said this.
Yes, I did.
It was about the last movie.
He described this movie as
hard to follow.
Hard to follow, and I cannot necessarily argue with him.
Yeah,
he's not wrong.
He gave it 2 stars.
But the weird thing is what he describes it as, at least according to Wikipedia, is fairly positively.
Yeah. Well, he says it reminded him of a Chaplin film, or of specifically Modern
One
Times.
that we will watch later.
Yeah, and reminded him, too, that in Chaplin, economy and simplicity were virtues, not the enemy. So he's implying that this movie, in getting complicated, loses itself. Which I don't think it necessarily... I think this movie needs to be complicated.
Yeah, because it needs to drown you in this world.
Yeah, because it needs
I
to
agree
drown
that
you in this world.
it could be shorter. There are scenes that do not necessarily have to exist, but none of them subtract from the film. I don't think.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
I mean, you could make this movie a half an hour shorter, without cutting the dream sequences and without cutting anything that is essential.
You couldn't take a whole lot out, but there's definitely some amount that you could take out.
I mean, I feel like there's bits of world building that maybe aren't necessary because we've already established the world so well. But it's okay. I don't have anything in mind particularly that would need to be cut. Nothing. There's no negative scenes where I'm like, man, I wish they cut that out. Mm-hmm. Well, other than that one we've already talked about at length. But that's like 10 seconds. So, if that. So, but it is a long film. And it is a bit hard to follow. In that, especially towards the end where things get more and more absurd, it is a bit like, what is going on here? But I think that's the whole idea, right? You're just supposed to go, what is going on here? What is this madness?
And you have to do that. And you have to build to that so that we understand why it's driven him crazy and that he's been driven crazy.
Right.
And that at least some of this absurdity isn't actually happening. Though enough of it is that it's still a pretty ridiculous thing.
Huh.
Like all of the different people interviewing him when he's in the sack.
Oh, I love that.
And it's just
I love the list of charges.
Yes.
And just the fact that like that transport has grown in magnitude. Now it's like a fleet of troop transports or something.
Yes, it was one personal transport, and then it was a personnel transport, and now it's a fleet of personnel transports.
Yeah, it just has grown, and like it's beautiful because we see that incompetency is almost like a game of telephone.
Yeah, I mean,
that has been going on throughout the film, but like that is like a running theme that is to point out like, and it grows. It just
this
grows.
This is how little slight typographical errors have affected things. And,
right,
and while that's the principal plot has that up front with Buttle being arrested instead of Tuttle, kicks everything off. But at the same time, those little things are going on, and the personnel carrier has become, or the personal carrier has become a personnel carrier, has become a fleet.
Right, and I love that because we get to see very obviously from beginning to end how things like possibly non-existent terrorist organizations come into existence through this sort of bureaucratic game of telephone.
Yes, where somebody...
I love it, and it's great that we get to see it.
And they probably even have a name now, because someone capitalized a word in a sentence.
Right, and now, that's their name. And exactly. And it all is, they want to imagine in their universe, the people of this universe want to imagine that the bureaucracy makes things cleaner, makes it more accurate and more efficient. Yeah. But all it does is amplify human error. Yep. It's fascinating. And you get to see, to me, that's where I see it the most. More than the Buttle Tuttle thing. because that's more just like to get the story kicked off.
Well, yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. That starts as the small thing, but it's reflected so much later, and then it's so much worse. And I like that we get that, and then the next person's talking about insurance, and then
I know, I love it. Like, and then like how to deal with their interrogation to like minimize
the payment plans and the
and like how you have to get insurance structure for specific things if you want to save money.
Yeah,
and like how you should just confessing early can save you loads of money, with always functioning on the assumption that like everybody who comes in is guilty.
Yeah.
And will confess something, because I assume that considering their methodology, everyone...
Oh, well, everyone's got something to confess.
There's no such thing as an innocent man in this universe. It's wonderful. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's horrible, but it's wonderful in that, like, this universe is just amazing. But so I also am reading Wikipedia right now.
Oh, no.
Well, I just happened to scroll down from the Roger Ebert thing and notice that like it's one of its movies that is listed as influencing heavily is Hudsucker Proxy.
Well, yeah, visually, obviously.
So yeah. Well, we even get that same scene of the mailroom like cart.
Yes, moving
through is like almost identical.
Yeah. Oh, one really great thing about that scene in this movie that I love you brought up because it gives you an excuse to say is that scene was so well choreographed because they appear to walk down 2 or 3 aisles during that scene. Mm-hmm. They're actually walking down the same aisle. And it is one continuous cut. And as they turn the corner, they're actually turning around.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Because there was only one aisle for them to walk down where they were filming it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, so clever.
Yeah, so it's a really cleverly shot little thing. It's really great. But yeah, Hudsucker Proxy obviously has a very, very heavy influence in style and visualization. They also talk about Dark City, which is a little darker than this movie.
Yeah, I've never seen Dark City.
That Dark City I would name as one of the best science fiction movies. Especially,
I will have to see it.
I would definitely suggest watching that. I don't know if I have anything else to say. There's just
no. This movie is one of those ones we've encountered it before. It's good and yet overwhelming, and so really hard to talk about.
We've
had it happen before.
Yeah, we eventually just evolve into saying, "I love this. I love this. I love this."
Yeah, and we should just stop.
Yes. So it's time to stop.
Watch this movie. You will like it.
Thank you once again.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
Next time, we'll be talking about Akira Kurosawa's 1961 film, Yojimbo. So that'll be fun. Mifune's in it.
Maybe we'll have a guest.
I love Mifune. We'll see if we can get our good friend Donovan Hill, our resident samurai culture expert. I really hate calling him that, but friend of the show, Donovan Hill, nonetheless.
Yes.
He's an expert in the American legal sense of the term, in that he knows more about it than us.
Right. Well, he is definitely an expert in having watched all the films.
Yes. So, anyway, I don't mean to downplay Donovan either, because he's a great fellow, and I look forward to having him if he joins us. I will have to give him a phone call and find out if he is. We'll hear you, and we'll see you next time. You'll hear us next time, I guess. Thanks for listening once again. This is Lost in Criterion. Adieu.
See you later.
You've been listening to Lost in Criterion, a production of With Two Brains. The show is hosted by Adam Glass and John Patrick Owatari Dorgan. Jonathan Hape did the music, and Adam Glass also edited it all together. Feel free to contact us by email via lostincriterion@withtwobrains.com or join us on the web at www.lostin